All right, welcome back to the 1090 podcast, where life is a bunch of unfair bullshit, and then you get to decide how you respond to it. I think is how the intro goes, something like that. Weston, thanks for coming over. I have a joke that, like, if you're on the 1090 podcast, your life probably sucks at least a little bit in some way. So I'm really sorry.
Or at least it did for a minute.
At least it did for a minute there, yeah. I have like a couple weird questions just to kind of settle in and then just get to know you. So I think we'll do those first, and then I'll read the obituary.
Sure.
And then we'll dive into it. Okay. What's your go-to order at McDonald's?
Right now, because I was cutting carbs, I just dropped 50 pounds. So my go-to is a double quarter pounder, but on a plate, no bun. Just meat and onions and that stuff.
With cheese or no cheese?
Yeah, I'll pound the cheese for sure.
A Royale with cheese. You ever seen Pulp Fiction?
No.
Oh, man. Well, I recommend it.
Yeah, I'll just get honestly, if I'm really hungry, I got two of them, just a big old, 4 patties. Just eat it with a fork.
You just lost 50 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
Dang, dude. What'd you do to lose all the weight?
Just cut carbs.
Carbs.
Yeah. I'd done it again, right actually before my wife passed away. I did it because diabetes runs in my family and my numbers weren't looking great. I was like, so I dropped it and then let it kind of come back. Started working on ice cream machines, had unlimited access to ice cream, which wasn't good, and started coming back.
Those McDonald's ice cream machines. So you're the guy we should all be mad at, or are you the guy we should love?
If it's working, you're welcome. Okay.
So we love you. You're the guy that makes them work.
Yeah.
Okay.
Most of the time.
Depends how you look
it
at
ain't
it.
even broken. They're just lazy. But you could do a whole episode on just that whole thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so right now it's just meat and cheese.
There you go. Are you ready for my next would you rather?
Sure.
Okay, would you rather have $1 million, any way you want, cash, Bitcoin, like whatever, I don't know, or $10 million, but they're all pennies, and if you want to buy anything, you got to roll the pennies to purchase, and you can't pay anyone to roll pennies.
So I got to roll all the pennies.
You got to roll all the pennies.
They're not pre-rolled. They're all just
not pre-rolled.
Stacked.
Correct.
Oh my gosh, I'll take the $1 million. I ain't got time for that.
You're leaving $9 million on the board.
I can make $9 million out of the mill and save myself the effort.
All right. No, you.
Nah,
I clarified. You cannot hire anyone to
I ain't gonna have time to spend $10 million if I got to roll all the pennies.
Yeah, I think you made the right choice. Like, I think you just. What would that even look like visually? Like 10 million pennies? Like, would that just fill up the whole house? Like, it's a lot of pennies.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. If you could combine any two superheroes together to make a mega superhero, what two superheroes would you combine together?
I think Thor with Deadpool's attitude would be pretty cool.
Well, and Deadpool can't die either. Like, you can get cut in half
totally.
and just come back with a lightning bolt.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good combo.
Give Mjolnir to Deadpool and I'd be happy with that.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's enough. Would you rather? Thanks for being a good sport. We're gonna take a left turn here into Sadnessville. I'm gonna read your first wife's obituary. Sound good?
Yep.
Okay. Lauren Connie Brandon, December 5th, 1993 through April 12th, 2019. Our hearts and lives were forever changed on April 12th, 2019 when our spunky, vivacious Lauren Connie Gordon Brandon left this world very unexpectedly after suffering a massive pulmonary embolism. Lauren was born on December 5th, 1993 in Provo, Utah, to her parents Vaughn and Jennifer Gordine, thank you. She was a ray of sunshine her whole life and enjoyed being a second mother to her siblings, Justin and Dylan. She had big, beautiful eyes and a fantastic smile with an infectious laugh and personality that filled every room. She could win the hearts of everyone that interacted with her. She loved paying compliments to strangers and smiling at everyone that she passed by. Lauren had a love for sports. Learning and reading, she began playing competitive softball when she was 8 and tried and excelled at a variety of positions, including pitching, catching, most of the infield and outfield. Many family vacations were spent traveling to various states playing tournaments. She graduated from Lone Peak High School in 2012 and continued her softball journey at Yavapai. God, that was not even close. Yavapai Junior College in Prescott, Arizona. Lauren received her pharmacy technician certification in 2013 and learned many different aspects in her field that included IV therapy, compounding, and retail. She excelled in her jobs and loved working and interacting with patients and coworkers. She met her forever love, Weston George Brandon, on February 16th, 2017. Oh, man, I love this, Weston. This is great. They eloped and were married on April Fool's Day 2017 in Las Vegas, Nevada, at the courthouse with only their parents present. The following year, they were sealed for time and all eternity in the Mount Timpanogos Temple, surrounded by family and friends. Lauren and Weston moved to the Colony, Texas in March of 2018 and spread their love and vibrance to their ward and work families. Lauren loved playing games, watching cooking shows, making yummy treats, snuggling with her husband, singing, laughing, and eating cake. What was her favorite type of cake?
Strawberry shortcake.
Ooh, strawberry shortcake. Lauren was so excited to be a mom and welcome their sweet baby boy, Vance Weston Brandon, at 26 weeks. Way too early, but tough and feisty like his mom. After 5 days in the NICU, Lauren was finally able to hold her baby for the first time, and she could not stop smiling. She only had him in this world for a short time, but she will be watching over him forever. Lauren's love for life will be passed down to her baby boy through the stories and experiences of family and friends, far-reaching. He will know his mother's love as he learns about her generous, loving, and kind spirit. Lauren is survived by her husband, Weston, her son, Vance, as well as grandparents, parents, and siblings. Lauren was able to continue blessing others in this life through the generous gift of organ donation. She is an amazing young woman, and the world is a little less bright without her in it. We will all miss her every day and hope to carry on her great example of kindness and service to others. Funeral services will be held April 20th. Okay, should be a good episode today. Life's 10% what happens to you and 90% what you're going to do about it. Welcome back to the 1090 podcast, where life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you respond to it. Weston, when's the last time you heard or read that obituary, you think?
Well, in its entirety, probably when it was first written. I don't think I've read that entire thing.
Do you know who wrote it?
I remember being told, but I can't remember. It was either her mother or grandmother. I can't remember. My mother-in-law will correct me when she hears this episode exactly who wrote that. But no, I don't remember.
No, yeah. I wasn't aware who was writing mine when I mean, you're just in such a daze. And I'm sure you were with your son getting ripped out in like 26 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
he fit in my hand. He's tiny.
Yeah, it's such a lot going on. Where do you want to start with the story? You want to start a little bit before it all got ugly, like the good times a little bit? Well, tell us about this wedding in Vegas. This sounds awesome.
Yeah, that's a good story.
Like April Fools in Vegas. This is so great. I love it.
So I joked that there were two proposals in our relationship. I proposed to her, and then she kind of re-proposed back to me to massively move the timeline up. We were originally thinking like September or something like that. And I had signed up to go do door-to-door sales for pest control and was going to be gone for the summer. And she's like, absolutely not. It's not happening. So one day after work, she's like, hey, let's go eat. We went to JCW's, and while we're sitting there, she's like, will you marry me this weekend? And I was like, what? She's like, yeah, because we were already going to be down by Vegas. There's what used to be called Front Sight Firearms Training Resort down there. It's something different now, but we were going down there with my dad and my uncle and some cousins to go take a training class all together. So she's like, we're already gonna be in Vegas. Let's just elope down there. And I was like, shouldn't we like talk about this? She's like, I already talked to your mom about it. Or no, I already talked to my mom about it. I was like, of course you did. So I was like, well, let me sit on this for a minute. Like, make sure there's not some reason that we shouldn't do this fast. And she just sat there. She's like, there's not one.
We're going to do it.
So I sat there like awkwardly eating my shake. And I'm like, oh my gosh, am I going to be married this weekend? Is this really happening? So I was like, I guess. Sure.
I love it, man.
So then we went back to my parents' house, and she's like, they knew that we were going to Vegas. My dad was even coming with. And so Lauren goes up to my mom. She's like, so do you want to go to Vegas this weekend with us? And my mom's like, she knew just the way that she said it. She's like, why? She's like, well, we're thinking, she's like, you guys going to elope? She's like, yeah. And I was kind of worried how my mom was going to react. My mom was like, that's awesome. Let's do it.
No way.
Okay.
Heck yeah.
So
man.
yeah, we didn't tell anybody except Lauren's parents and siblings, and then my parents and siblings knew about it. So they came down there while we were there, and even my cousins and my uncle that were there with us at this class we were taking, we didn't tell them, but they kept joking to us. They're like, guys, you should get married while you're down here, and just like on April Fool's Day, it'll be the funniest thing ever.
Seriously.
Even though we had already planned this, we'd already scheduled it with the courthouse. And we're like, no, we're not going to do it, you know. And then my uncle he's like, if you guys do it, I will tell to my wife. He's like, if you guys do it, I'll buy you a gun. And we're like,
buy you a gun.
I was like, maybe now.
Like, what size gun are we talking? Are we talking automatic? What are we talking here?
You know, he's like, not me. I already had one. He's like, no, I'll buy her one. I was like, all right. And so
just like, a judge hand cannon, or
yeah, he bought her. He actually did end up like getting her a gun, but we told him like, no, dude, we already planned it. Like, so we went and did it at the courthouse that night, and then showed up for like the third day of class wearing wedding rings.
Yeah,
and they saw it. They're like, what the freak did you actually do?
Did you guys give, what's that called when you say something you really mean to the other person at your wedding?
The vows?
The vows. What was that like? Did you guys do that part? Or?
Yeah, we did. I don't remember what they were.
But like, was it like, were you nervous? Was it funny? Was it serious?
No, it was, I guess, kind of a blend of the two. It's so weird. You do it in the courthouse, not just this little room. You go in there and there's like the officiator, and the rooms can fit like, it's honestly about as big as the room that we're in right now, this living room.
Yeah.
And a little altar up at the front kind of thing, and they do the thing. You say your vows, and then, yeah, you know, there's no music, no nothing. You just like hug, high five, cool, and leave. And then we just took some pictures outside of the courthouse, had our marriage certificate with wedding rings on, and Lauren had, I think she had her mom take a picture on her phone, and she just put the April Fool's Day Snapchat filter on it and saved it, and then posted that on all the social media. Like, that was our wedding announcement.
How did people even take that? Like, this isn't real.
So people were all like, oh my gosh, that's so funny. That's doesn't surprise me you guys would do that joke. But then also some people are like, I could see you guys totally doing this too. So what is it? So, you know, for 2 or 3 months after that, I'd randomly get a message from someone like, did you guys actually do it? Because
I think that's just, it shows a lot of who you guys were. Maybe Lauren too. Like, because a lot of girls, like, they're just so serious with the whole wedding thing. Like, they could just never. But
and she was at first. She had this.
But I just think like it reminds me of Courtney. Honestly, like just so like laid back, chill, and that's awesome.
I think the whole thinking about the wedding thing stressed her out so much, and she finally just said, "Screw it.
We love each other. We're gonna let's just get married. What are we doing?"
Yeah. She's like, I don't want to spend all the money.
You guys glad? Some hindsight now with her passing. Are you glad you did it that way? Like,
yeah. I mean, that's an awesome memory. It's an awesome story. You know? And we still had like a formal reception at my parents' house a couple months later, and So we still got the whole come give us money kind of gathering,
You got to have that. Like,
Yeah.
How'd you guys meet?
It was on, I just got back from my mission, and it was at a young single adult church building. I was there for some other meeting and was coming out, and there were some people in there playing volleyball. And I liked playing volleyball. We did it as a young men's group in the ward that I was in before I went on my mission. And I was like, maybe I should. Now I just want to go home. Been in this meeting for too long. I'm tired. I go to walk out the door, and then something hits me. It's like, you need to play volleyball. I was like, what? I was like, no. So then I go through the first set of doors, going out the second set of doors, and it hits me again. It's like, you need to play volleyball. Okay. So I just turned around, walked in there, and then I see her there playing volleyball, and it's like, got the Google eyes. I was like, whoa.
That's why I was
like, she's all right. And so I was like, no, I had already committed, because I was already committed to go do door-to-door sales for pest control at that time.
You're crazy, by the way. Like,
This is the other thing. So from the time we met to the time we actually got married in Vegas was 6 weeks.
Holy shit balls.
It was fast. It was middle of February when we were at the church building. I go in there, and the thing that really made me notice her at first was somebody on the other side of the net threw the volley. It was her turn to serve. They threw the ball at her way harder than you should throw anything at a woman. But she just caught it like it was nothing. I was like, she played softball, and I played baseball my whole life. So I was like, all right.
That's the girl I'm going to marry.
Okay, cool.
6 weeks. I think I have milk in my fridge older than 6 weeks, man. That's quick, but when you know, you know.
Yeah. I was like, I'm not talking to her, whatever. I want to sit here and look at her, but I don't want to talk. I want to talk to her, but I'm not going to, because I don't want to start anything. I just told my mother 2 days before that, I think, that I was done doing dating while I was going to go be gone for 4 months selling stuff.
Yeah.
And then she's like, yeah, we'll see about that. And of course, then I meet my wife like 2 days later. And I wasn't talking to her. I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. But she kept coming up to me, like kicking my feet, asking me questions, like flirting, over the top flirting. And I was like, all right, I'll talk, but maybe get your number and hit you up after or something like that. But I was sticking to my guns. I was like, no.
Yeah, you got to play Mr. Cool. You don't want to come off desperate. Like, I'm not here to play volleyball for you. I'm here to get some aces. Like, you got to like, yeah.
Then after the game, we were going outside, and she's like, well, I had a good time. Do you want, I was like, oh, all right, I give up. Yes, give me your number. Let's do it. And we went on a first date a couple of days after that, and then it was his history, as they say.
So how long were you married until she passed?
We got married, so it was 2017, so it was about 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
What was your marriage like for 2 years?
It was spontaneous.
You guys were doing a lot, traveling and...
Yeah, we went to Bali for our honeymoon on super short notice. Her sister travels all over the world doing blogging stuff, and she happened to find some crazy good tickets to Bali, and she's like, do you want to do this for your honeymoon? And I was like, yeah, that's what I want to do for my honeymoon, is go hang out with my sister-in-law. That sounds like a great time. And it was, but at first I was like, why do I do that? But then she was absolutely an excellent tour guide, and it was a phenomenal experience. Volcano erupted while we were there.
No way.
So the flights were grounded. We couldn't get home for a couple of days. We all got sicker than dogs, got some kind of food poisoning, crazy stuff always happened. And then we did that right after the door-to-door sales, and then being freshly married, that was a rough experience being brand new married. And I decided I didn't want to do the door-to-door stuff again, so I took a different sales job doing software stuff. That took us to Texas, where my son was born, and then that's where everything happened, was down there, just in Dallas area.
Yeah, because I was reading a little bit of your book, and then after Lauren passed, you moved back to Utah with your parents, I think.
Yeah, all of our family was still here in Utah.
Yeah, so were you planning on having a baby together, or would that just happen?
Yeah, no, we had planned on that. We decided that we were going to start a family, and it had taken a little bit to get it going and actually get pregnant and have it stick, because we had a couple miscarriages at first too. But this one worked. It just door opened kind of thing a little early. They called it an incompetent cervix, which sounds like a super judgmental term, but basically she dilated without any contractions. And So like, well, now you got to be on bed rest until the baby comes, So then she went into the hospital for that and was there for about a week. They pumped her full of some, I don't know what exactly it was, but it was some type of steroids that are engineered to help the baby's lungs develop faster or something like that, which worked because by the time he came out about a week later, he didn't need to be intubated. He just needed a little CPAP pressure on his nose. So he was, for all intents and purposes, he was perfectly fine 26-week-old baby.
What's going through your mind and your heart watching Lauren kind of get cut open? Not kind of, but C-section, emergency C-section gets cut open, and it was 25 or 26 weeks.
She went in at 25, and then it was about 26 weeks when it happened, when he was pulled out.
So what was that like?
That was I had started working from home because it was closer to the hospital. I got the okay to do that. And she was just stuck up there, and then I would go up there and visit him, every day after work. And then one day she called me in the morning and said, hey, the OB just came and did the check and said he's coming, and they're not waiting for you, so you better get up here. And I was driving an old 97 Dodge Cummins at the time, and I topped it out on the freeway getting up there and showed up just in time. They got me all scrubbed up and pulled me into the operating room just as they were getting ready to pull him out. I think I had maybe 60 seconds to spare before they pulled him out. And she was high as a kite on whatever drugs they gave her. I was going to ask you
like what she was like, but I guess that answers.
Yeah, she was. She is so. There's a nurse there talking to her, and this kind of speaks to her personality too. The nurse that was there at her head, had this big curtain in front of them, so you can't see everything that's going on below them. And the nurse is there talking to her, and she's just looking at this nurse in her eyes, and she's like, wow. And she's like rubbing her arm. She's like, your skin's so soft. And I'm like, what is going on? Then she looks at the nurse. She's like, your eyes are so pretty. How'd you get those? I was like, how'd you get those?
How'd you get those?
It's like she's loopy on whatever drugs they had her on. It was funny. Those wore off pretty quick. And they pulled him out and put him on the scale, and he was 1 pound, 13 ounces. He's tiny.
Were you thinking like you might lose them, or was it the doctor's like? No,
I mean, I wasn't really thinking. You just like stuff's happening. You're just kind of there.
Like, is that good? Is that bad? What does that mean?
Yeah, I don't know I figured if I needed to know something, they would tell me. I was watching them, and and obviously it got explained to me later, and it made sense. But at the time, they pulled him out and they grabbed like plastic wrap and just wrapped him in plastic wrap like a burrito. I was like, what the freak are you doing? And so I asked, I was like, why are they wrapping him up? And they're like, well, he can't hold his body heat, so they wrap him in plastic to help him stay warm. I was like, oh. And they gave him a little breathing tube on his nose and like wrapped him around his head and everything. Like looked like a little microwave burrito. And they just set him on the scale.
You're just sitting there like, what the hell or what?
Yeah,
And then they flew him to the NICU, or they took him?
No, the NICU was there. That was another miraculous thing. Was the best NICU in the region was the hospital that they were already in. So they didn't have to take him anywhere. And so they weighed him and then hooked him up and wheeled him out. And they said, everything looks good for now, but we've got to go do, tests and make sure everything else is okay. Once we're done with that, you can come see him, then we'll come get you, So I just hung out in the operating room with her while they stitched her back up and got her all taken care of. And then it wasn't very long. It was only a few minutes until maybe 10 or 15 minutes that somebody came and got me and said, all right, Dad. And that was the first time anybody called me Dad. Like, all right, Dad, come on. You can come see your boy. I was like, I didn't even respond at first because I didn't think they were talking to me.
Yeah, you're like,
they're like, oh, that's me now. Yeah. So then I went out and looked at this little teeny wrinkly old thing, that was my kid. And it was so weird because I was so used to babies being like fat and swollen, newborn babies, and have plenty of weight on them. And he come out just so tiny, just skin and bones, it was surreal. And then I'm looking at him like, he's okay. They're like, yeah, he's good. He's breathing. He's fine. And he's, wiggling his arms around. And then I'm looking at the numbers. I'm like, green and blue's good. They're like, yeah, that's good. Everything's fine. We just got to watch him. Like, his only problem is that he's just so young, he doesn't remember to breathe. So we just have to keep, little CPAP mask on his nose to kind of push air in there and just remind him to take a breath, and then he'll breathe and he'll be fine. So eventually just got the lowdown that we just have to wait for him to be able to hold his own oxygen and his own body temperature is all we had to wait for. And it took him 2.5 months to be able to do that. But
So he's in the hospital for that long?
Yeah, it was a long time. They discharged him middle of June. His original due date was actually the 4th of July. So I got to take him home 2 or 3 weeks before his original due date.
And Lauren, what was her health like? It was good at this point?
Yeah, it was everything was fine. And yeah, even after that, they kept her in the hospital for another day or two to recover from the C-section, and they put the massagers on their legs, which they did with my second wife too. That seems like a kind of normal thing where they'll massage their legs to kind of help keep blood clots from forming. Even with people that aren't pregnant, like you go through a surgery, then you're at a higher risk of blood clots just because you had surgery. So I remember they stuck those on her, and they told us, there's a really, really low percentage chance you get a blood clot, but this is to help, prevent that. And we just became the statistic, on the wrong side of that one. But she didn't, there weren't really symptoms a whole lot of, if anybody's ever witnessed or seen a pulmonary embolism, they just get short of breath because they can't absorb oxygen,
If I remember reading right in that book you wrote, she just kind of collapsed at home, like in the kitchen maybe?
Yeah, she was, for a couple of days leading up to that, she'd had some episodes where she felt like she couldn't catch her breath, but she also had anxiety issues and had medication for it. So she just brushed it off as anxiety, which, kind of made sense given all the crazy stuff that had just happened. So even her mom, who's an RN, had been for years, she didn't even see anything to be concerned about. And she was there with us for a lot of this. And then one morning it was just me and her at home, and I was still working from home, and she had been on the couch and had been having another one of these episodes as she was having a hard time catching her breath. And she called me over, and she's like, I'm freaking out. I just need to calm down. All in my head or something like that. She's like, I think I'm going to go take a shower. And I was like, all right, I'll go back and get back to work. And this is probably 9 o'clock in the morning. So she goes in to go to the bathroom, and I go back and sit down, and then I sit down, and I'm only there for a minute, and then I get this heavy feeling like I needed to be with her for some reason. So I got up and went into the bathroom, and she wasn't feeling good there, and that's where she collapsed in my arms in the bathroom, and called 911 there and did CPR. She told me, she's like, I think something wrong. I think you need to call 911. So I did, and it was when I was on the phone with 911 that she collapsed. And so, of course, I lose it and on 911, and the lady's like, okay, now you need to start doing CPR. And she's like, counting me through the whole thing, and I'm going way too fast and have to slow down. And luckily, also, there was a ambulance or a fire station, something maybe 4 or 5 blocks away. So EMTs showed up super fast. They were there within, I think, 3 minutes. Really fast.
It's hard for me to imagine doing CPR on the person I love most. Is it just complete shock and you're just almost robotic, just trying to save her?
Yeah,
or what is that even?
It's I'd done CPR training before in Boy Scouts and for jobs, and they tell you in the training that you should count. They tell you to get a beat going, because they tell you you're probably going to go too fast. And that was 100% the truth. Because all of a sudden my adrenaline's through the roof, and I'm kind of having this holy shit moment. And
yeah, how much of that training, because I've had a lot of CPR training too, but I could imagine when it's on someone does a lot of that fly out the window, or are you able to retain?
No, actually, I remember doing it and kind of recalling where your hand placement's supposed to be and kind of how deep you're supposed to go. So some of that came back. Just the problem was my heart rate's going so fast. I'm just going too fast to be super effective. So the lady on 911 is counting as loud as she can. She's like, 1, 2, and I'm trying to follow her and realizing I'm going too fast and having to slow down, and then going too fast again and having to slow down again. But everything else, I do remember in the moment, remembering I've been taught how to do this a few times and having to do it. And then the EMT showed up, and they had a machine to do it. They had a stretcher, and I'd never seen it before, but it was some device, this big old arch thing that does CPR for him while they carry him out. So then they stuck her on that, and the thing did CPR for her for the next while they took her to the hospital.
You just followed behind the ambulance?
Yeah, the paramedic there, he came and told me, he says, we're going to go, lights and sirens, do not follow us. He said, don't follow us. We don't need to have you getting hurt and having to have somebody take you to the hospital in addition to this. So you follow traffic rules. We've got this. When you get to the ER, then they'll take you where you need to go. So her parents were close by at the time, so I had called them, and obviously they came over really fast. So I just rode to the hospital with them, and then they stuck us in a waiting room until a social worker at the ER was able to tell us what was going on and give us updates.
What are you doing? Following the ambulance to the hospital? Are you just crying? Are you screaming? Are you in shock? Are you silent? Are you calling people?
I was surprisingly calm. In the event of initially doing CPR, I was, kind of having to come apart. And then when the lady told me the EMTs showed up, I got up to get the EMTs going, and then I just had to watch them do their thing. And suddenly everything, I'm sure somebody could maybe explain biologically what was going on, but all of a sudden everything became super calm. Like, I was extremely aware of everything around me. My heart rate seemed like it was very low. I had almost like perfect recollection of everything that happened. And an EMT came up, asked me what happened. And, they have to ask, multiple people will ask you what happened, so they make sure they get the right story. I think it was a fire chief or deputy fire chief or somebody came in, asked me a story. A police officer came in like 30 seconds after that, had me tell him the story, and told him all the detail all the same way, and then was kind of the same, super calm for some reason for the next few minutes, even for the ride to the hospital. Having this hope, like everything's going to be okay, kind of calm, making sure I'm keeping myself calm a little bit. And I didn't really have much of a come apart again until social worker came and told us that they were still doing CPR on her like 20 minutes later, And at that point, I was like, that's too long. That's way too long to be doing CPR and be able to come out of that at least normally, if at all. So then that's kind of the moment that I was like, oh crap. Like, this is getting real, because up to that point, it's just like everything's happening so fast. You don't even like really register exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
Until I think you have that time to sit down. And my in-laws left the room to go be with my wife, and I was left in the waiting room completely by myself. And that was the moment when I got to kind of have my conversation with God and have my moment to like, this is probably happening right now.
What'd you tell God? Or ask?
So I'd had a number of experiences in my life where I'd known that he was real, where I'd felt him tell me something or talk to me, and things that I couldn't deny. But everything came into question in that moment. And I'm like, I thought I knew, but now I'm not so sure. Or at least I need to really know right now. I'm hoping for a miracle. Obviously, I'm going to pray for that. But at multiple times in my life, when I had needed something from him, I had found it in scriptures somewhere, Bible, Book of Mormon, whatever. And so I didn't have any scriptures with me, but I had my phone, and I had an app on my phone that had scriptures on it. So I just knelt down crying, and I was like, if I ever need you to talk to me in the rest of my life, this is the moment you need to tell me something right now. Kind of angrily disrespectful way to say it, but that's how I said it. And I remember I pulled up this scripture app on my phone. I just kind of closed my eyes and started like tapping, like, where's it going to end up, And it ended up actually in a chapter in the Book of Mormon. And when I opened my eyes, the first thing that I read was, it was talking right to me. And I can't remember the exact chapter, but it was Book of Alma, and it said, my son, I see that thy mind is worried concerning the resurrection of the dead. And I was like,
Wow.
oh my gosh, that's
pretty spot on.
And so then reading, the first few verses of that was like, just hit me like a ton of bricks. And so the feeling that I got in that moment was so powerful. I was like, I knew that. I'm like, I can't ever deny that. But also in the same moment, that was also kind of an nonverbal way to say, like, she's not going to make it. But this is also part of the plan. That didn't erase my hope of a miracle. I still hope for the next 12, 14 hours that, she would come out of it. And nurses were saying, every once in a while, somebody will just wake up and it'll be fine, But all the tests they were doing, like, it wasn't looking good. She wasn't responsive to anything. And with the amount of drugs that they put in your system to get your heartbeat going, the adrenaline or whatever they put in there, and then all the drugs to bust up clots that they had given her because they had found that she had pulmonary embolisms at the time. They're like, her heart rate with how much stuff she has in her should be like 200 beats a minute, 250, something crazy, but it's barely staying above 50, So you just got to sit in the ICU for the rest of the day, kind of waiting to see if anything would happen, and nothing ever did. So
I just kind of highlighted this statement that you made in your book. Do you mind if I read it?
Yeah, go ahead.
But one morning, 2 weeks later, she collapsed in my arms at home. A pulmonary embolism, a complication from her C-section, rendered her unable to absorb enough oxygen to sustain her life. 12 hours later, I was signing papers for organ donation. In less than 24 hours, my entire world was ripped away. I'm just going to read this part again. 12 hours later, I was signing papers for organ donation. In less than 24 hours, my entire world was ripped away. I think, like, just the suddenness of how, I mean, you hear it all the time, like, tell the people you love them, and hug them, and life's fragile, and I don't know, I think we all feel like, oh, like, I'm fine, like, that happens to other people, but when it happens to you, it's just the suddenness of it is just so traumatic.
There's kind of some denial you go through in the moment. You're like, no, this doesn't happen. This doesn't happen. This is movies. This happens in movies.
Especially with Lauren being such a great person. Like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, what, like, she was so good.
Yeah.
And then your son, like, I just have questions about where your mind's at with your son. Like, just losing, like, he's struggling to make it. And now his mom, who breastfeeds him and is his mom, is gone. Mm-hmm. So what, were you just riddled with fear and anxiety and like, how am I supposed to raise this kid alone, or how are you handling all of this?
Yeah, there was a lot of that. In my experience talking to a lot of other people that have lost their spouse, I talked to a lot of widows and widowers. I've realized how my mind was working in the immediate aftermath was different than a lot of people in some ways. That I knew, like, for most people that I've talked to, the thought of being with somebody else is the last thing on their mind. Like, they don't think about that. And not that I was consciously putting effort into thinking about that, but the same day that it happened, I knew, I was like, there's no way that I can give this kid everything that he needs by myself. I can't be a mom. I can be a dad, but I can't be a mom. He's going to need a mom. And so that thought was bouncing around in my head all the time. I was like, I didn't want to think about it. Imagining myself with somebody else was kind of gross to me when I would think about it.
Yeah, it feels very unnatural and wrong.
Yeah. So I didn't like it, but that was heavy on my mind immediately. And I knew that if I was going to do my son any favors, that I needed to do whatever I had to do to be able to process what I needed to process so that I would be open to that sooner than later for his sake. And so, in the quiet times in the weeks that followed, that was something I thought about a lot. Like, what do I need to do today to make sure that I'm preparing myself to be ready for that for him, And one of the things that nobody told me to do this. I just kind of, I don't know, just thought it on my own, I guess. But I knew that I couldn't let that experience turn into any kind of severe post-traumatic stress disorder, the horror of what I witnessed. And
you got to give CPR to your wife.
Yeah. And the things that your body does that I got to watch when your body's trying to get oxygen, when that's happening, like, that's not in movies. I've seen plenty of people die from getting choked out in action movies, it's not even close to what it looks like. And I knew, I was like, I cannot let that be traumatic for me in the sense that that I'm just always triggered by stuff.
That you can't live a life. That you
Exactly.
Can't.
I was like, I have to be able to process that. So, and what I was getting to was, nobody told me to do this, but I just figured a good way to do that was like, I just assumed that I would probably have to process the event and be able to separate my emotions from it. If I was able to process what happened, to give my brain what it needed to understand what happened, but then also to be able to process the emotions separately. And I'm not a therapist. I don't know if that's a thing or not. I did end up, going to therapy for a while afterwards, but I told my parents, I told her parents, and I eventually told a therapist later, in all of the gritty, gory details, in as much detail as I possibly could, exactly what happened, what it looked like, and like step by step through the whole thing. But I told it from the perspective of like I was watching it happen from a third person.
Yeah, kind of like out of body.
Yeah. Kind of. Not that I had an out of body experience by any means, but as I was retelling it, that's what I was envisioning in my head, and that's how I was describing it. Like, okay, then I came in, and then this happened, and and yada yada, and all those details. And then I'd go through and separately talk purely about the emotions that I was feeling and not describe the situation of what was happening when I was feeling those. And doing that a few times, I think really helped me to be able to purposely be able to think about the situation while like shutting off the emotional piece of my brain, so that I wasn't blocking anything from myself, I guess. And so then when I went to therapy, it's actually my therapist was a good family friend that lives close to my parents. And so he did the first little while for free. And he runs his own practice. And he actually specializes in both grief and addiction. So I was like, dude, I need some grief therapy. He's like, we did it at his house. And so I did that again with him. And
what are some things you did with him that really helped you?
That we did that a couple of times that helped even more. But then that helped me so much that we didn't do a whole lot of grief processing after that. It was more like, how do you get my mind kicked back into gear to go back to work and, get back to doing the things that I need to do to take care of my kid, and so a lot of it was focused around how do I get back into the zone at work. And honestly, I never did. I was pretty successful with my sales job before that. I had made President's Club goals. I had gotten promoted and had made plenty of money doing it. But then after that all happened and I wasn't working for like 9 months. I was on FMLA leave for a while. And then coming back, picking up the phone to call somebody I couldn't do it.
Why?
The anxiety went through the roof. And I can't explain to you why exactly, but something I was so good at before. I could call up anybody and talk to them about whatever, and I sold stuff all the time. But then all of a sudden, having a conversation where there was fear of conflict, I couldn't handle anymore.
And fear of the unknown, like,
yeah,
I don't know how this is going to go.
Yeah, my mind did not like uncertainty.
And for me, too, is like, I've had just a complete loss of, like, confidence almost. Like, I don't know.
Exactly.
I don't know if what I'm going to say is even going to make sense or.
Yeah.
Like, I just felt like a loser.
Yeah, and that was mostly what I talked about with the therapist, too, was he said, well, because I went to him, I was like, dude, I cannot freaking do this. I was so good at this before. Why can I can't even make a phone call. I can send emails all day long.
I think part of it was guilt for me. Like, how can you try to make a sell when your wife's dead? Like, part of it was like I was like guilt tripping myself. Like, I wasn't hurting enough because they were dead type of thing. Like, I wanted to like hurt more almost. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but.
Well, I did the exact same thing because, like I said, I'd been very intentional about trying to process things on my own too, and I think I did halfway decent at that, and obviously needed some help from a therapist too. But I was able to do it fairly quickly. So, the time that I got to the point where I could think about the event and I could see those images in my head without having a breakdown, and then you just kind of get to this place where you're just kind of floating. You're just like,
with that image of you performing CPR, that just pop up like at night when you're trying to sleep, when you're driving, when you see someone getting CPR in a movie. Like, how would that? Was that like a daily visual thing you'd have to experience for a while?
For the first couple of weeks, yes, and then it got a little bit less, and it would happen every once in a while. And that was one of the things that I realized. I was like, these flashbacks, these things ripping me out of my conscious mind to go relive that. And I was like, I can't be dealing with that. So that was when I first realized I was like, I need to dive in here and process that, so that I need to take control of my mind again, because I felt like I didn't have control of it.
Yeah, you are out of control. Like, your mind is,
something else has taken the reins and it's just yanking you around.
Like these visual aids that just send you. Yeah, you just have no control over your own thoughts, and it's such a helpless feeling.
Yeah, and then it's not even images that would bring it back. It'd be certain topics that you would hear in a conversation, or certain, I don't know, you'd be watching a movie and something seemingly unrelated would happen, but it would be emotionally similar and bring up those emotions, and then it'd be on a whole nother trip. You know? And it'd take me 10, 15 minutes to come out of that,
What's the grief feel like, losing Lauren? Like, how would you try to explain it, or what were some of the worst parts of it?
Definitely just that feeling lost after. Like the event sucks.
And hold on, you're 23, right?
At that time, yeah.
You're 20. You're a baby, dude. You're so little still.
Yeah. And the event sucks, obviously, and everything immediately following sucks. And then, I'm a dad and I have this tiny little kid, and one of the most frustrating things in thinking back, what I realize now, I was super angry. Just very angry.
Well, which should be.
Understandably so.
Yeah.
But what I realized I was so angry about was that I felt like I had just completely lost all my freedom. Because I had someone that I loved and I cared about, that I could do whatever I want with.
You had your whole life with this person.
And now, one of the other things that I felt so ashamed of was that I was given this child that I didn't have a connection with. He didn't grow inside of me. I didn't get to feel any of that. The only any type of connection I had with him was what my wife was telling me. Right? So to me, it was still all a third person relationship here. Something I was just hearing about. But then he gets put in my arms, and I'm feeling guilty that I don't have this overwhelming, what I expected a fatherly love to feel like. And I was like, is there something wrong with me? And I kind of hated myself for a bit because I didn't feel like I loved my kid like I was supposed to. And I learned that, that comes over time as you have experiences with your children. And I've had 2 more children since then, and it is very different going full term, and I, able to feel him moving and kind of hearing him going and hearing the heartbeat and the sonograms and all those kind of things, and being able to start to have a little bit of a relationship with my kid before they're born. And then when they were born at that point, it was a completely different experience. I did have some type of relationship when they were initially born, more so than I did with my oldest son at the time that he was born. So both that and like you said, I was a kid. I was 23. I had served a mission. I'd gone out for 2 years and worked my butt off for that. But outside of that, I had lived for no other reason than for myself at that point. And now I couldn't go do anything I wanted to do. I now had to ask my parents permission if I could leave the house, because this tiny little baby couldn't come with me, And so that little piece of it was very, very frustrating to me. And I didn't realize that that's what it was at the time. It was, casting my mind back on those times that I realized there's a part of me, the youthful, childish part of me was forcibly removed, at least much of it, and that process was painful, and having to all of a sudden have all of this insane amount of responsibility that I'd never had before, and so then you just kind of feel stuck, you feel lost almost. And that was another thing, because I was successful in my sales job, a lot of my self-esteem came from that I was able to make a decent chunk of change doing sales. And now, like, as a man, my number one way to provide for what is now my responsibility, now I feel like I can't even do that. Like, now what?
Yeah.
What do I do? And that's the biggest message that I wrote down in my book. What I learned through that process was that you don't get clarity up front, at least in my experience, on what you're supposed to do, how you're supposed to do it. Yeah. You might get advice, but you don't get
I'm 4 years removed, and I have no clarity over here, so I don't know what's going on.
Well, and it's not like we get clarity of, like, this is what you're supposed to do the rest of your life. Right. But I think what I learned for me was that clarity was the reward of committed movement. And if I wasn't willing to start moving, then I would never know what I was supposed to do.
Starting moving forward again is so hard, because just part of it just feels like betrayal.
Yeah.
At least it did for me. Like, I'm like, and still today, like, I just can't. Like, I just can't. I feel like okay, can I read this from your book?
Anything, yeah. It'll be published. It's all in there.
Okay, so we're going to kind of introduce your second wife. Can you remind me of her name again?
Kearsley.
Yeah, I'm a little worse with names, dude. So I'm sorry. Like, okay, it's hard to say whether she fell in love with me or my son first, which I relate to pretty well with Sammy and Blue. But I'm sure I don't need to know. Much to our surprise, we were discussing marriage within days. Some folks, okay. And I dated again very quickly after Courtney died. And so I just have some questions here. I hope you're comfortable with it. I mean, you did write it down, so I figured.
It's in there, yeah.
Some folks close to us opposed it, while others celebrated it. And we navigated some interesting times before our wedding. So this sounds hard, dude. This sounds really hard, and I just kind of want to pick your brain, like, just from not even outside people, but just like you, like, because this is a struggle I have, is balancing my love for Courtney and pain for her, and respecting and honoring that, but also knowing she wants me to be happy and I need to move forward, and, like, being fair and being fair to Sammy. Like, Sammy deserves someone who's not totally distracted all the time by another woman that's dead, which is, and I struggle with that. Like, some days I'm just, like, daydreaming. Mm-hmm. And so it's hard. Like, how did you navigate, like, the pain of feeling maybe some guilt, but also knowing, like, I can't do this alone, and I need to find love again, especially being so young at 23. So I have that question. And then also, like, outside perspectives, and how hard was that to navigate?
Yeah, I won't share any names of people that had some issues because it's,
I want
their
names.
their business. Well, and here's the nice thing is that I'm pretty sure everybody that initially had issues with it, we've reconciled with and have great relationships with now. So it was only temporary for us. But at the time, like it was emotionally rough for me and Kearsley. But to answer your first question, the like opening myself up to another person, that was, I didn't want to. Like I knew I needed to, but I didn't want to. So what I did was I downloaded the mutual dating app, the LDS version of Tinder or whatever that is.
Yeah, it's like Farmers Only, but for Mormons.
Yeah. And so I was like, okay, I need to start, I guess, being open to this because I was feeling the tug on my heart, on my soul, whatever, to do that pretty hard. So I knew that I needed to do that. So I downloaded Mutual and made a profile, and I was like, well, I can't hide any of this, so I'm just gonna put it all on the bio and put pictures of me and my kid. Like it's all there, so there's no like surprises, kind of a thing. And then sitting there and you're swiping and you're looking at all these other women, and it's all no, 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 and then you reach the end and you haven't swiped up or yes on anybody. And I did that once, and I'm like, well, I realized it's like I just said no because they weren't who I want them to be. Who I want is my wife that just died. But that's not fair to them. So I looked in and I was like, oh, good. They have a premium version that will tell you if someone swipes on you. So then you can just look at who already said
You had to pay the premium.
So, dude, that was so
package?
worth it. Yeah, it was like $20 or something like that. I was like, take my money. I don't even want to look at this. So I set my phone down, didn't look at it for probably a couple of days. And then I picked it up and I had some notifications like, so-and-so swiped on you. So-and-so. So I was like, really? Like, you want this mess? Okay. And so there was a list, and I'd go through and look at a couple of them. And I told myself, I was like, all right, don't even look at what they look like because it's not your wife. So you're going to look at them and just be like, no, it's not who I want. So just like look at what they say about themselves. If it sounds like a personality you could gel with, then see what happens. But then I saw the picture of my wife now. She had braces at the time, but for some reason I was like, damn, she's cute. Okay. Maybe. I was like, wait, whoa. That's the first time I've ever had a thought like that about anybody else besides my wife. So it kind of took me back, and I was like, what the heck just happened in my brain right now? But so then I swiped on her too, and I started having conversation with a couple of different ladies, and which were all phenomenal people, by the way. You probably have to be to feel like you want the kind of situation that I was in. But then I scheduled a date with my wife, and she was the first person I went on a date with. And I remember before we went, I was worried that I would be standoffish or weird or awkward or something because, where I was coming from. So I remember just saying a prayer and asking God, I was like, dude, you obviously needed her for something, so you've probably got her off on some job right now. But if you could give her like a few hours off so she could come with me and tell me if this is who she wants to be the mother of her child on this earth, at least, then I would appreciate that because I'm not in a headspace to make good judgment right now. At least I don't think I am. So we went on our first date. We met at Texas Roadhouse, and conversation was awesome. She wasn't awkward at all. Was super conversation, super fun, which was super refreshing because most people after the whole event are all like walking on eggshells around you. They don't want to accidentally trigger you or offend you or don't know really what to say. So I'd gotten kind of sick of just being treated like a leper, almost like worried that I was going to explode at any given moment. So the fact that she just treated me normal and just talked to me like a normal person was super refreshing. And then we went, and there was a hatchet throwing place somewhere in Murray that we went, and we had a blast. We're like, let's keep hanging out a little bit. So we went down to Cold Stone and got some ice cream. And then at the end, it was time to take off. And sorry, Kearsley, I'm going to tell this story. I know you're embarrassed about it, but at the end of our date, I asked her, I was like, well, hey, I had a blast. Do you want to go on another date? And she was feeling so nervous and awkward. She's like, I mean, yeah, do you? And I was like, that's literally why I asked you. Why would you? Yeah, do you? And so she got all embarrassed about that. And I was like, yeah, let's do another one later this week. And as she was driving away, I was just sitting there watching her drive away, and I was like, okay, babe, well, what do you think? And as soon as I said that, Spirit hit me like a freight train. And I just got the chills, and I was like, whoa. I'm like, okay. So I immediately hopped on Mutual, and I respectfully told all the other ladies.
To her? No,
Like, yeah, right there.
6 weeks again.
No.
Yeah. How many weeks did you make it this time?
Our wedding was delayed a little while because of some of the drama that was going on. But we were talking about getting married a week after we met. It was pretty quick. That
not for Mormons though. That's about how it works.
So I have yet to meet somebody that has beat my timeline. I'm sure there's somebody out there, and you might get comments of like, "Well, we talked about it on our first date or whatever." I don't know. But I knew that night. I was like, if it keeps going the way that tonight went, then this is the woman that I want to marry. And I came home and told my mother that, and it was kind of a similar experience after my first date with Lauren. Told my mom after our first date, I was like, if it keeps going like it did tonight, then I'm going to marry her. So when I said basically the same thing with my second wife, my mom just laughed. She's like, how do you always know? I'm like, I don't know. And so then it was, like a week. It was probably a week later, maybe even just a little less.
So how'd you explain it to all the haters who thought you were still hurting or rushing it or whatever they said, or what?
I didn't.
You just let them say whatever?
I realized in that time that, well, I don't think I realized it then, but soon after that.
Maybe haters is a strong word. I'm sure they were looking out for you.
Yeah, they were.
With good intentions, but.
There were some people that were kind of offended, and then there were some people that were worried that I was doing it for the wrong reasons, or that she was doing it for the wrong reasons. And, but I learned in that process that it seems to me that when you have an experience like this, a lot of people also close to this person, because you're their husband, you're their wife, your spouse, whatever. You're the closest to them that they can get. So they seemingly attached their grief to me in a way. So that if I was making efforts intentionally to heal and to move forward and to progress, and they didn't feel ready to do that yet, that it made them very uncomfortable. And some of them voiced those concerns rather loudly. And, there were some conversations were had like, I'm doing this because, like, you might say that you're just looking for a babysitter for Vance. I'm like, you know what? Maybe. But this is what I feel I'm supposed to do. This is what I feel is right. So this is what I'm moving forward with. And you can like it or you can hate it. And I'm sorry either way. But this is what I'm doing. And then there were other people that when Kirsten and I decided to get married and we set a date, they were like, that date's way too soon. That's ridiculous. You got to push this out. And there's, a whole bunch of drama around there. And we did end up pushing our date out a little bit into March. Like we had talked about getting married. Like I said, we met in August. So this is only, my first wife passed away in April. We met in August, and we had discussed getting married again probably in August or September. I didn't actually propose for a few weeks after that. Eventually did, and then when we were working on dates, that was when most of the drama happened when we were discussing dates. But we pushed it out a little bit, and we actually got married in the Provo City Center Temple right as COVID hit. That, like, Trump announced this is a pandemic and everything's shutting down kind of thing. And the LDS temples had severely restricted how many people could be present for weddings or whatever. But at our wedding, we had both Lauren's parents, my parents, and my wife's parents, my second wife's parents, which was a beautiful image there with all of us there. That the guy that was marrying us there in the temple, he took a minute to say, this is eternal perspective. He kind of took a minute to talk about it, and it was a really cool.
It's pretty cool.
It was a cool experience. And then that was on a Saturday, And then on Sunday, the church announced that the temples were closed until further notice. Like nothing was happening. So we like squeezed in the very last possible day.
Oh, I thought you were going to go to Vegas again.
No, I mean, we would have. Everybody after that had to do their weddings civilly other places and then had to, work out their ceilings elsewhere later. But yeah, we barely squeezed it in the last possible day before they shut those down. And so my wife was a little bit bitter that we, didn't get the whole wedding thing that she kind of wanted because of COVID and all this kind of stuff. And it was a little bit of a bummer, but it ended up being a super, that's such a unique story, and having that kind of an intimate wedding experience, I guess. And my son, at this time when we got married, this was March 21st. His birthday is March 29th, so he was just about a year old. And my sister smuggled him up and over the fence for pictures.
How is Vance doing today?
Oh, he's great. He's playing T-ball.
How old is he?
He's 6.
6?
Yep, he just turned 6. He's awesome. He's doing so good. And he's got a little bit of an attitude sometimes, but he's 6, and drives his mother crazy, and I have to come home and
what's the dynamic sometimes. Like? Do you guys talk about Lauren a lot, or especially with your current wife? Does she let you what's that dynamic like? Does she let you have pictures of her in the house? Do you guys talk about her? Or?
Yeah, if you walk in our front door, we have a credenza against the table, or against the wall, excuse me. And in that credenza is photo albums from Lauren playing softball at Yavapai College. There's a softball signed by our teammates in there.
Man, that's so cool.
And there's both me and my wife served missions, so our missionary plaques are there. Lauren didn't serve a mission, but we have a picture of her on our wedding day that she took a selfie holding flowers. Yeah. So that picture is sitting right there, and then her organ donor badge is sitting right next to her picture.
Yeah, dude, I have a collage of pictures and just a mix-up of Courtney, Riggins, Frankie, Race Rider, Sammy, Blue and Sammy. It's just this is weird, but this is my life now.
Yeah, this is us. This is normal for us.
These are all the people I love. Let's talk about your current wife. I wish I could say her fucking name. I'm sorry. We can edit the F word out. I can't remember her name. I'm so sorry. But I think there's something to be said for these girls that can handle guys who have lost. Let's talk about her for a minute. Don't you think it takes a special someone?
Absolutely.
Because you're going, I'm sure you're still hurting, and it takes a certain special someone to understand that balancing act you have to do the rest of your life.
Yeah, she's the only word I could describe her with is an absolute angel. And I know people say that, but
yeah, I know what you mean.
It's a whole other level. Because there were times when we were dating that I would have a dream or something, and I'd wake up sobbing because I missed Lauren.
Yeah,
and she would hold me while I was crying about
Sammy just holds me and cries with me. Yeah,
what?
I know.
I don't know. I don't know if I could do that,
I don't. I could now. The Mason before the car.
Yeah,
no,
like I said, the whole thing. I don't recognize myself before it happened. It's a completely different person.
Yeah.
And Kearsley had been married previously and had gotten divorced. It wasn't a great relationship, and then she had served a mission after. So she had become open to dating guys that had been in previous marriages or had kids or something. She'd been on a few dates with some other guys that had kids and something. So that wasn't something she had to necessarily open herself up to when we met, kind of a thing. She was already at least in that space a little bit. But yeah, you should have her on to kind of tell her side of the story of.
Well, I tried, man. I invited her.
I know she was going to be here, and then my freaking baby decided to start throwing up, and she's like, yeah, I'm gonna stay home.
That's a good reason, I guess.
But she was on her way. She was coming, which is a miracle in and of itself, because I mentioned before we started recording, she's a photographer by trade. She does wedding photography and all this stuff, and so she loves being behind the camera, but when she's in front of the camera, she's like,
different ballgame.
Yeah, it's a different, but she doesn't like to be in the spotlight. And I try to be careful how much I share of her experience too, because she's also a little sensitive about how much she wants people to know, because it's very sacred to her, this whole thing.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? But yeah, she's she was God's gift to me to help me start climbing out of that pit, you know.
What, why do you say that? Like, what was it about her? Just hope, feeling loved again?
Yeah, I remember one time,
did you question, like, no one's going to be able to love me? I thought that
yeah,
for a long time, like, no one's going to want.
Like, who's going to want this? Like, this is way too much.
And back to the feel, like, you really feel like a absolute loser. Like, you just, because you lost everything. And so, like, yeah, just how you see yourself eternally, and then asking, like, how is anyone going to want that mess?
Yeah, it was. I was having a bad day one day.
And then, like, sorry, but then, like, I don't know if we want to go there, but then, like, how do you know, like, how do we know we're not just gaslighting ourselves? Like, maybe we're just terrified and heartbroken that we lost the person we love, so we're just thrown in denial, and we found the first person that would accept us, and we just are throwing all of it on them, and, like, love me. And, like, how do you know you're not just gaslighting? You're like, because the pain is so severe. So I have that thought. And then another thought I have is, can I keep being my true self? Or can I just keep bashing her over the head with this trauma and sadness and tears and just zombie mode of not being present in the moment? Like, if I keep this up, I'm going to lose her too. And having that anxiety, like, I'm riddled with that too. And then, like, when you lose someone you love so abruptly, I don't know if you have this too, like, now I'm just in a constant state of fear. Like, I'm going to lose Sammy now. I don't know how, but I just am. Like, it could be a random sandstorm, or it could be, who knows? I'm kind of just bracing myself for that. And then at the exact same time, I just have this fuck you energy where it's like, I don't care what anyone thinks. I'm going to live my life. And I truly love Sammy more than anything. Like, her and Blue are my life. And I have that too, which is totally opposite of the other guy.
Balance,
and so then having those two guys in your head day after day, you're just like, I don't know which way up and which way is down. Like, I just want to smoke a J and go to bed. Like, I'm done. Like, how do you manage all of that?
Oh, man. I mean, that comes up every once in a while now. It definitely did way more before, you know. But with how much, I think it's a balance between, like I said earlier, that committing to movements and always moving forward. What I did with myself was, I realized that if I allowed myself to stay in those what if mindsets, that I would never leave the what if mindset.
And I learned from Colin Campbell, what if mindset is a form of denial. Like, when you're playing the what if game, you are living in denial. You are not allowing yourself to be in your current situation. You are spending your time in this what if I did this, that, which isn't real. It's denial.
And I still, every once in a while, I'll get caught doing that.
Dude, I don't get me started, but I think society in general, every individual struggles with denial and self-sabotage way more than we talk about. And I think those two things are, like, in our decision making more than we realize.
Dude, you mentioned the self-sabotage. There's a whole section in my book that I wrote specifically about
big problem for me. Like, this is your episode. I'm gonna shut up. I'm gonna try to just shut up. But no, I'm serious. Like, I don't know how often we actually make mistakes. I think it's just self-sabotage. Like, did you really forget to set your alarm? Or did you just self-sabotage? Like, did you really want to try something new on the menu? Or did you just self-sabotage so you'd have a shitty dinner? Like, think about it. It's scary, but think about it.
Well, God, when you have these terrible experiences, it's kind of, the terrible experience almost becomes... Well, I don't think it almost does. I think it becomes part of your identity, that your experience in life is shit.
Yeah. So
and that you keep, like, your comfort zone is reinforcing terrible experiences.
Yes, like, I am comfortable in absolute chaos and hell. So, like, when life's going good, self-sabotage.
you got to screw something up.
Let's get it screwed.
And the fact that you can recognize that is huge, because I don't think most people recognize that they do that. You know, they whether it's trauma they had as a kid or just experiences they had in their adolescence growing up, and they kind of formed this identity of themselves that might not be the healthiest, and trying to progress from that is scary because it's not what they're used to. And our brains are wired for security, right? To save it, especially when we've had experiences like we've had, like these holy shit moments where we got to try to control everything, right? Like risk mitigation times 100, right? So every time my wife takes my kids down to see Lauren's parents, they live out of state, and they go down to see them every few weeks. And I'll find myself when they're leaving, I'm like freaking out. Like, did I check the oil in the car? Did I check the tire pressure? Like, brakes are going to go out. They're all going to die. Like, can I have these moments for a couple of minutes? Then I have to like tell myself, like, chill out. Like, they're fine. Like, whatever's going to happen is meant to happen. Like, you can deal with whatever's going to happen. I don't want to think about that, but life is going to happen however it's going to happen. And I just have to trust myself that as long as I live intentionally and just put my best effort forward all the time, things will happen the way they're supposed to happen. And that's kind of how I got into the whole like coaching and speaking and writing the book. Like that all happened so fast that my job that I have now is a blue collar job. I work on commercial kitchen equipment. I went to HVAC school. When I realized, I was like, I can't do sales anymore. I got some advice from a mentor of mine that said, maybe you should go back to school. And he told me that immediately, like within a couple of weeks after Lauren had died. And at the time I was like, you're nuts. Like I have a great job. But then 9-10 months down the road, I'm not doing so great at this great job. And that kind of comes back to me. And I'm like, I should go back to school. And I did. And I got this blue collar job fixing stuff. And I applied the same level of tenacity to that as I did to sales, where I was like, I know that I can't guarantee that I'm the smartest guy in the room, in my classroom or at work or whatever, but the only thing that I can absolutely control is that I am going to outwork every other guy in this room. And I know that whatever crappy experience that I have to go through to make sure that I'm putting more effort in than those guys is not going to be anywhere near what I've already experienced. Like, because I've come out of that,
I gave CPR to Lauren.
Yeah, like that sucks. Anything on this job is going to be a cakewalk compared to this.
Right, but then also you're terrified of everything. You're like the bravest guy, and then like
it's two halves. Yeah, you can't. Yeah. It's hard to walk the middle line.
I know.
So then I would be training, and I progressed really fast at this job, and do really well at it. And then they'd start hiring other guys, and they'd just stick them with me, and they'd go ride with me all the time. And I was really good at teaching the guys and training them, and having to teach guys with completely different personalities. Realized that some of these guys that I trained, in order for the practical knowledge to stick, for them to really learn, there was character development that had to happen first. Like these guys were still teenagers in grown men's bodies. Yeah. And then it wasn't just one; it was more than one. And so on these long car rides or work van rides to jobs, it would start out, they'd be asking questions about the job, or I'm teaching them some type of technical thing about electricity or whatever with the job. And then I'd like start to see how they're behaving and how their temperament is on the job. And I can realize where these blocks are happening in their brain. And they're like, I'm not getting this because X, Y, Z. And I don't know how, but I could see right through that. I'm like, nah, the reason you're not learning that is because you haven't satisfied this other piece of your own soul yet. That you still have this identity crisis with yourself, that you don't even know who you are. So being able to like learn anything new is extremely difficult because you're comfortable with who you are, even though you don't even know who you are, and trying to step out of that, your brain's like freaking out. And being able to recognize that was surprising to me at first, that I could pick that up on somebody so easily, because that was me. I went through the same thing and multiple times, especially after my wife passed away. So then it just turned into this like one-on-one life coaching stuff with these guys through the job of HVAC and refrigeration, Yeah. And helping them to figure out like they got to discover themselves first. In the book, I came up with a framework that I called DRIVE: discover, resolve, invest, visualize, and elevate. And
wait, so say that.
I said that too fast.
Yeah.
So the book's called,
because I'm still on DRIVE here.
So I call it the name of the book is The Overhaul, and by the time this publishes, it'll be out, so you can go get it. But the name of the book is called The Overhaul, and because that's what I felt like I had to do with my life. I had to completely overhaul it, and in what I learned through overhauling my life, I learned I could apply to way more people than just people in grief. Really, the question that I learned how to help people answer the best is, what do I do now? Like, what do I do with my life? Where do I go? What does that look like?
Yeah, what do you tell them? That's a good question.
The answer isn't a specific answer for that person. The answer is that clarity comes through committed movement. But what does that movement look like? Like, how do you start moving, and even what direction do you even start moving, right? And that's where I come up with the drive thing: discover, resolve, invest, visualize, and elevate. And I figured that little framework acronym out by looking back at what I did to climb out of that pit, and how I attacked my new career, and how I attacked my relationship with my wife, and how I focused and I worked my butt off.
Would your drive be Vance?
I mean, he was initially my why. Yeah. And in the book, I even break down why into a little acronym. And really what you're asking when you say, why are you doing something, or what is your why? Like Simon Sinek is famous for the find your why thing, motivational speaker, dude. But in there, I learned that why was really what hails you. Like, out there in the world, there's a trumpet that's calling your name. You don't know where the hell it is, but you can hear it. And it's up to you to either start heading wherever that is, or to ignore it and pretend like that's not for me, that's for somebody else. And being able to recognize that you're hearing a trumpet off in the distance is a difficult thing to figure out. And that's what the first step of the drive thing is discover. And I go through like this whole process in the book of how I discovered what was hailing me, like what direction was that going. And at first, when I first started, like when I decided to change careers, it was just going with my gut, really what felt right. You know, I knew the answer to what hails me, what was calling me, was providing for my son. I needed security. I used to thrive at that time. I used to thrive in the uncertainty of sales and the anxiety of sales and chasing after something. I lived for that. But now I couldn't do that. My brain was broken. My self-esteem was shot to hell, and I just couldn't do it anymore. So I needed something that I could go put effort into and work into, but that could give me kind of a guaranteed return. Yeah. You know, so that's what I decided. I was like, I'm going to go into trade school. My father is an electrician. Well, he's actually in instrumentation, which is a niche in the electrician's field, and makes plenty of money. A neighbor of ours is a plumber for the union. So I talked to some of those guys about trades and decided that HVAC was the route that I wanted to go based off of some advice from them, and attacked that. And the whole time that I was doing this, I was just following like where I felt like my heart was pulling me, even though I couldn't necessarily explain why. And then once I got in the job and I got the security that I was looking for, they gave me just enough space to be able to relax enough to start allowing those bigger questions to come in, you know, and start being allowing myself to grow more. So then I'd have these experiences training these guys on the job, and something like lit on fire in me when I was helping these guys, not necessarily with the technical stuff, but with the life stuff, you know. I'm like, when they would ask me a question or like how did you do this, or what about this, and I'd start saying something, and then something would come out of my mouth. I'd think of some other way to explain it that they would understand, and I would surprise myself with what I would say. And I'm like, damn, I'm gonna write that down. I was like, that was a pretty good wisdom nugget I had in there, actually.
That actually sounded good.
And that kept happening all the time, and you know, in a selfish way, it made me feel good. I was like, you know, maybe I have life figured out. And then something crazy would happen. I'm like, never mind, I don't have life figured out.
Why do people ask me? Let me ask. Can I ask you another? Would you rather?
Yeah, go for
it. You have to pick one. You can't have both.
All right.
So, would you rather tell these people you're doing these life coaching sessions with, like, would you rather have a heart full of gratitude and appreciation for what you have, or would you rather have a heart full of growth and wanting to change and adapt and grow?
Why do I got to pick one?
Because they're different.
Oh, man. Well, I think one has to come before the other, so I would pick the gratitude one first.
Like, you cannot progress and get anything more unless you first have gratitude for what you have, type of thing.
Yes, but also gratitude is the catalyst for growth. You can't have growth without gratitude, in my opinion.
But, okay, how about this, though? So, before the car crash with my family, I get my dream job, dude. Like, basketball trainer. That might sound silly to some people, but that was my dream job. Like, I was literally full-time basketball trainer. I'd wake up, dude, and I'd play early morning basketball with my friends, pick up, and then I'd train players for as long as I wanted. Dude, there was one day I didn't have much training, so I just went to this high school tournament and just scouted players that I'd try to recruit on my AAU team. Like, that was my job. It was the best.
Yeah.
Courtney gets her dream job. She wants to do home and hospice. She's a great nurse. She wants to do home and hospice, not only because she likes it, but she also gets really flexible hours that she wants, so she can be a mom to the kids. And she makes more money than I do, so she's like my sugar mama.
Yeah.
And dude, like...
That's how I was, too. Lauren made so much more than I did. At least for a while.
But before I took that job and we moved, like, what if I just kept my old job, never moved? I'd probably have my family. Oh, yeah. So, like, in my mind, like, it's just really confusing to me. Like, the grass isn't always greener sometimes. Like, it's actually not. Like, man, I would trade it all back just to have them again. Like, I'd work the shittiest job to have them still be alive. So I'm not really sure how to take those experiences. Like, I went for my dream job, I got it, and then I should have just been grateful for what I had and just stayed there.
No, I strongly disagree with that, because if that was meant to happen, how many people has this podcast helped since you started? How many people have you gone and talked to?
We don't keep track of numbers, so we don't know. But at least one.
At least me.
At least me. At least one today.
But like, you've gone and done speaking engagements at.
But this is what I'm saying. Like, I would give that all up for Frankie. That's just one of them. And I think what that real lesson of that is, because you've been saying, you have a whole book and it's full of great advice of all this shit that you've learned from going through absolute hell. But I would, and that's the point of life, right? Growth, learning, becoming, adapting. But I would trade all the valuable lessons one could get from losing so much, I would happily give away for one of them back. And so what that lesson teaches me is relationships are the number one thing. I would trade every life lesson I've learned, all the willpower, all of it, for one of them. And so I think to be happy it's all in your relationships. It's not the career you have at all. It's not gaining further education. Like, I'd give that all up for one of them. So I think a brutal lesson that I thought I already knew, but now I know much better is relationships, man. That is the number one thing that makes people happy, that gives us meaning and purpose. And the relationship you have with Vance, the relationship I had with Blue, I think that's just something that I wish people, like all these guys being stressed at work, like swap that stress for how much are you listening to your kid?
Yeah.
Like swap that stress for, can I put my phone down and listen to them? Can I go to their games? Can I ask their advice on something? Can I buy my daughter flowers? When's the last time? Like, so that's just kind of how I see it is. And I'm not, what I'm doing is what I'm usually doing. Just saying a bunch of, like, who knows what I'm even saying right now. I'm just rambling. But what I'm trying to say, man, is I think relationships is by far the number one thing that we have in this life that matters the most.
Yeah. And I think I 100% agree with that. And
so don't reach for the stars when you already got all the stars, man. You already got everything you wanted. Like, I think some people don't know just how good they actually have it.
I think it's a mistake to reach for the stars if you have to leave your relationships behind to do it.
Yeah.
But if you can bring those people with you, like, how much better life could be bringing them with you as you reach for the stars. Like, that's what I think about.
Yeah.
And then again, on the relationships, like I have a great life now. I got 2 more children that I would have never had.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, I could think about like, oh well, what other kids would I have had with Lauren if this didn't happen? You know, I don't know. It didn't happen. Obviously, that's not how it was meant to be. So I don't have them, and that's all I can think. I don't have those people because they don't exist. Maybe someday, who knows?
Yeah.
But the people that I have right now came as a result of how I responded to my, I guess you could say, crucible moment.
No, I love that, how you respond to it. That's
If I hadn't have been intentional about moving forward and I just allowed myself to stay stuck in that hole, then I wouldn't have the life that I have now. I wouldn't even have the people that I would have now. I'd still be stuck wishing it never happened. I'd still be stuck just being depressed and angry all the time.
I think that's what I mean by showing up. Like, you just got to get there, like move, like just give yourself the opportunity, get yourself in the seat, and just showing up is such a big part of success. Like, I think my podcast is a good example of that. Like, nothing special, but just continued showing up for people, and they've shown up for me and created really beautiful conversations that people can get something out of.
Yeah.
So yeah, dude, I think that's so true. Like, movement, because this grief is gonna be in your ear the rest of your life. So you might as well be moving with it.
Yeah, like I haven't. When I say move, it's not move on from
like
my wife. You know, it's not. I didn't move on from Lauren. I didn't leave her back there. She's still here. She has her own little special corner in my heart that's locked up nice and tight. That's no smaller than it was the day that she died. But my heart was able to expand to allow another woman in there and 2 more children. Just like before you have any kids, at least for me, it was like, I can't imagine loving anybody more than I love my wife.
Weird, right? Like, the minute you're holding this person that didn't exist before, you're like, wow, my whole world's different. How'd that happen?
You know, and you're sitting there and you're like crying. You're like, holy crap, I get it now. I get why my dad was always on my ass.
No, that is the feeling. Like, you know, I get it now. I get life now. Like,
it's like it all makes sense. And that's just it. Like she's not gone, but I have. It's going to sound corny, but my heart is so much bigger now. There's more people.
No, I think like the pain stretches your heart, and you're because of the depth of the pain, you're able to hold more love. I definitely believe in that.
And then you can also support other people in their pain a lot better too. Like, before this happened, if someone were to come to me like, oh, dude, like my life, like this crazy stuff happened. I just lost a kid. I just lost my mom.
Didn't have the empathy before.
Yeah, you didn't have that. And you just kind of have like this, like,
you can only imagine.
Sucks, dude, but I don't know how to help you with that.
And now you're like,
now you can be like,
damn,
I can sit with you with this.
Sorry, man.
You know,
and you know that there's nothing to fix. There's nothing you can do to fix it. It's just gonna hurt. But
the only thing you can offer somebody that's going through something similar to what we have is that them knowing that you experience that doesn't make their pain any easier. It doesn't make it any softer. It's still just as sharp, just as bad. But the fact that they feel 0.001% less alone in that is a welcome feeling. That they can see that, dude, Mason lost his wife and a couple of his kids and nephew. Like, he lost most of his family, and he's still getting up every morning. Like, he's still doing stuff. Like, he survived, you know. And looking from the outside, they might not be like, I don't know how happy he is, but he's here. You know, I can still be here. Because when you're in the depths of that, like, you're wondering, like, I don't even know if I'm going to get out of bed today. There were some days I did not get out of bed the entire day. I just stayed there. I got up to take a piss, and I got up to get a bite to eat, and I went right back to bed.
That's a full day. You did a lot that day, man.
You know, I got up twice today. That was a ton.
Made yourself a sandwich. Wow, yeah.
But the fact that, you know, I was able to connect with a couple of people that had been through a similar experience when, you know, years previously. One of the biggest blessings for me and my wife was that Lauren's parents, and they gave me permission to share this, they went through the same thing that we are going through.
Oh, wow.
When they were married. because my father-in-law's first wife passed away also.
Way. Wow. So they have a very good.
The only difference is he didn't have any children with his first wife.
Right.
But
still, like,
Lauren's middle name, Connie, that was his first wife's name.
Aw.
So they named her middle name was named after his first
yeah.
wife. So then they were able to go through. They experienced all the same drama, all the same stuff that comes after that when you're moving forward and getting remarried that we did. So the fact that they were on the other side of the table at that point, I can't imagine what that's like for them to having gone through all that and had that experience, and now it's like flipped again.
Yeah.
Now they're dealing with losing their oldest daughter.
Wow.
I
wonder what that feels like for them. If that just feels like so like almost meant to be, like prepped in a way. I don't know.
In a way, yeah, I guess. I mean, if they were thinking that at the time, they're probably thinking that's a pretty cool way to prepare me for something like that.
Yeah. But
it served the purpose. Not to say that's the only purpose that it happened, of course, but the fact that with all the drama that was going around, that I wasn't getting any of that from them, that I still had a really good relationship. So cool. And still to this day, my wife, my second wife, and my kids, like they're Gigi and Papa. They have three sets of grandparents. They go see them all the time. They were just up here. They just came from out of state to come to a T-ball game, because they had time to do it.
I just think it's a really good example of empathy and sympathy and love. And yeah. I think that's awesome.
And I was actually, before I was coming on this podcast, I was texting my mother-in-law earlier this morning. I told her, I was like, hey, I just got the manuscript for the book done. I'll send it to you. You can give me some feedback. And then I asked her, I was like, the biggest thing that helped me feel better about the whole situation and feel peace about moving forward was the fact that you guys did also and had that perspective to help us through it. Are you okay with me sharing that? She says, yes, you can. Thank you for asking. But and then our conversation continued on a little bit, kind of about that, what I mentioned before about how people seem to attach their grief to you in a way. And if you move forward faster than they think you should, or more faster than they're ready, then that kind of causes all sorts of things to go on in their own minds. And it's just a kind of a mess. But it doesn't, you got to move. You got to. You got to get off your butt. You got to start moving. Even if it's only a step, even if it's only get out of bed to get something to eat for that day.
That start does the start.
You gotta move, and you gotta move more today than you did yesterday. And as long as you're moving towards something, and you can go to bed at night and say, I feel like I made an effort towards a direction. I don't know if I made any progress, but at least
I moved today. May have been in a circle.
I'm sore now, but I did something. Then you do that more, and you do that more, and then you start to get a little bit more clarity about where it is you're moving. And
then you're sad, but then you laugh and you're happy, and you're like, oh, I
can still do that.
I can kind of do both. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's anything else you want to talk about before we wrap it up with your top 3 favorite movies?
I guess, I'll finish the little framework that I have in the book.
Sorry, we didn't. Yeah.
Well, because I think it's valuable for not only people that are dealing with grief, but also just people that feel like they don't know what to do. Yeah. People that I feel passionate about helping are like the guys that I was training at work, or just getting into the career field, or kids graduating high school or something like that. Like, what do I do? I don't even know. And it's like, I don't know the answer, but I know how to find the answer. And that's what, inside me burns so hard, is I can help people understand that it's possible to find that answer, and I can show them how to go about finding that answer. And when I talk about the whole drive thing in there, like I said, I didn't know that's what I was doing when I was going through all this. This was more like casting my mind back on what all did I learn, and what am I passionate about helping people figure out, and then how do I teach it in a semi-organized way. And that's kind of how I came up with that. But the first one, as I mentioned, is discover, and that's not just discover what you're supposed to do, like the what hails you thing. That's discover who you are. What about you do you believe about yourself that you maybe shouldn't? What are things that you think about yourself that hold you back? What are some things that you do that aren't in harmony with your goals? And just having to take some time to really sit and think and dive into your brain. A little line that I put in the book was, it's a rare man indeed that decides to dive into the ugly days of his past to figure out why he thinks the way that he does. But it's a rarer man still who decides that he's going to do something about it once he figures that out or starts to figure it out, right? Yeah. Because there's so many people that have excuses and blame all of these terrible things that happen to them, which are still 100% valid. You know, for horrific things that happen to people, not just losing a spouse, but being abused in XYZ ways, or, you know, all these terrible things that happen to people. And then that becomes a piece of their identity, and then they don't like themselves. They blame that situation, and they say, I would be different if that didn't happen, but this is who I am now, and accept me for who I am, you know? And I think that's a tragedy, to accept ourselves for who we are, in the sense that who we are usually now is not as good as who we could be. And my experience losing my wife and coming out of that and doing all of this now, and I'm sure you feel the same way, like who I am today is a hell of a lot better person than who I was before she died. Like, not even close, right? Looking back at myself at 23, I was a selfish jerk. Most in a lot of ways.
Most 23-year-olds are. I think that's the point of the age.
and not to say that I'm not selfish now. I still, have tendencies, but my just perspective on life is so much different. And then the next step on that R is resolve. It's like, well, once you've figured some things out, resolve is where you bite the bullet and you start fixing those things. That's where you might have to go to a therapist to do some discovery and resolve some things, But that's the meat of what you got to do. You got to discover some things about yourself and discover what you want to do and where you're going, and then develop the resolve to move, to actually commit to move, but then resolve those things that you found that you don't like. Yeah. Right. If you don't do that resolve,
you got to walk. You're going to be stuck. Now.
Exactly. Yeah. So then once you start doing that and you start fixing yourself, then the next one is invest. Then you can actually start investing in yourself and investing in your movement, because now at this point you've started moving. You don't know where that trumpet's coming from exactly, but you at least know it's somewhere in here.
Starting to figure it out. You're narrowing it down.
Narrowing it down. Maybe for a kid that might be, I've at least narrowed it down, like the medical field is where I want to go. Like that calls to me. Or, whatever. I don't know what career field, but something in there. And you at least start moving there. And then you can actually start investing in yourself and like accelerate that movement. And then if you're investing in yourself, the most effective way to actually bring that into reality is to visualize it. People talk about manifesting, right? There's a viral video of Dana White talking about manifesting that's been going around, that he's like, I used to believe this was a bunch of hippie bullshit, but the people that manifest, like, this is who I'm going to be, this is what I'm going to do. And the only reason it's not here is because we're just not far enough along in the timeline yet, but it's coming. And they set, micro goals to get there. And specifically, they think about, once I'm there, who am I when I'm there? How do I think when I'm there? What kind of person? How do I act? What do I believe when I've made it? How am I going to be different? And they figure that out, and then they make that themselves now. So then they can actually become the person that can sustain whatever that reality is, right? And that's what I mean by visualize, is like in extreme detail, what does your world look like? What does your reality look like when you've made it wherever you want to go? And make that happen now as much as possible. So then the rest of it naturally comes into form. And then once you start doing that, the catalyst to everything is elevate, which this podcast is an excellent example of that, is just elevate others along the way. Elevate yourself too. That can kind of go hand in hand with resolve, of elevate the way you think, elevate your faith, elevate your actions, what you do, make things more effective, but then also elevate other people, because your growth isn't only meant for you. It's meant for everybody that you affect. Like, you have a magnetic field of influence that induces energy or influences other people in ways that you don't even really understand, just because of who you are and how you act. And your growth doesn't affect just you. It especially affects your family. If you're married and have kids, like, that's obviously that affects them. But then the people you work with, your friends, your family, relatives, everybody's affected by that. So intentionally, as you're moving, trying to elevate other people with you is where I think God actually joins you hand in hand. Is like, if you're going to do this and help me help the other of my children that I'm trying to help too, then we're really going to start pushing this. And once I figured that out and started doing that with, like, I do coaching groups with people on Zoom now and have people come on and I talk about the drive thing, and some of the testimonials that have come out of that have been awesome. Like, my life now, I never would have thought in a million years that I'd be, sitting right here talking about this.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you didn't either. But the fact that we are, obviously, we're not entirely in control of everything that's supposed to happen.
I love that. It reminds me of, I love we is greater than me. And that kind of reminds me of the same concept. Like, if you focus on your pain all the time, it just gets dark. But if you can help other people with it, which is what you're trying to do, like, I think that it's really all you can do.
Yeah.
So thanks for sharing that, man. I think it's powerful stuff.
I think when you try to help other people, it forces you to be a better version of yourself than you otherwise would be.
Yeah. It's motivating. He's like, wow, I'm helping people.
I'm
not even doing good. So if I did better, maybe I could help more people.
I was teaching people some of the drive stuff, and I was like, yeah, you need to do this. And I'd sit down. I'm like, well, crap, I guess I got to go do this.
Yeah, I got to do the R now.
I just told them to go, write in their journals and stuff.
We're getting into movies anyway.
These are huge dogs. Hi.
Don't let them knock over the wall. No, they're good.
Those are beautiful dogs.
Aren't they huge?
That's awesome.
They love me. Yeah, we're just wrapping up with movies. No,
That's a good little transition into our, what is it, movies?
Yeah, your top 3. Are you a movie guy?
I love movies. That was Lauren and I's favorite date night, was just dinner and a movie. And Kirsten and I still do it too.
Let's hear it then. Top 3. Start with 3. End with 1.
God, I don't know how to order them, but I love war movies. I've always been obsessed with war movies. So number 3 would probably have to be, God, that's hard. Probably Saving Private Ryan. I mean, that's if you like war movies, that's always going to be at the top. Number 2 is probably Fury and Brad Pitt, and number 1's probably the new Top Gun Maverick.
Wow, you are like a war movie guy. A man.
I could watch those movies all day long, and my wife loves Top Gun Maverick too, which I'm like,
yeah, he doesn't love Top Gun Maverick.
She's like, we should have our kids watch this. I was like, yes, absolutely.
Well, dude, I really sorry about Lauren, but I think it's super cool what you're doing about it. And thanks for coming on the show, my guy.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
Remember, life's 10% what happens to you, and 90% how you respond to it.